This lesson is on fractals. It's a chapter 7 extension piece. It's not part of the core part of the chapter, but it is an additional part. The word fractal comes from a commonly used math term. The word would be fraction, and that's because you use a fraction to create fractals. Fractals are objects that have three basic characteristics. You can see these two pictures are both fractals. You form them by repeating steps. The process is called an iteration. Every time you repeat the steps, it is called one iteration process. Fractals have the ability to have infinite iterations done. In other words, that means the process can be done over and over again, in theory forever, although in reality usually you run out of paper or screen or whatever it is you're trying to use. The third characteristic that fractals have is called self-similarity, which means that if you took a small chunk of one of the fractals and blew it up to the same size as the original, they would look identical. They would be congruent to each other. That's why it's in this chapter. So for example, if you look at this picture, this is called a fractal tree. If I were to take and cut off this portion that's purple and pink, and I were to blow it up, it would look very similar to the original tree. Same thing here. This is called a fractal snowflake. Same concept. If I blow this part up, it would look like the original that's down here. Each one of these corners, if I blew it up, would look just like this. Fractals can be found in nature. A few of the items that that come to mind are trees in general, snowflakes, and cauliflower and broccoli also grow in the form of fractals. There are three very popular fractals that we're going to use in this lesson, mostly because they're the easiest ones to draw. The more complex ones require computer imaging to create. The first one is called the Sierpinski's gasket. It looks like this after several iterations. It's also sometimes called Sierpinski's triangle. The original shape before any iteration process is done is a simple triangle. The iteration process is to find the midpoints of each one of the sides and then connect those midpoints to form a triangle. That takes the original triangle and it splits it up into 4 congruent triangles. You take out the middle triangle and you're left with 3 similar triangles. What fraction is used? In order to find the fraction that you use, you look at the original shape and how many pieces it is originally broken up into. Since our original triangle was broken up into 4 congruent triangles, our fraction would be 1/4. This process was done, this big triangle would represent the first iteration. These triangles would represent a second iteration. After a second iteration, you take each one of those 3 triangles that was left, find the midpoints, and cut out the middles. Then each one of those, now you're left with 3, 6, 9 triangles. The third iteration process would be to remove the middles of those 9, and then so on down the line. This picture represents 1 iteration, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those little ones represent 6. So this would be Sierpinski's gasket after 6 iterations. The next one we're going to talk about is the Cantor dust. It is pictured, this is the picture of Cantor dust here. It starts out, your original shape is a line. You cut it into 3 equal parts. So you split it here and here, creating 3 equal parts, and you erase the middle part. So what fraction is used? Since you take the original shape and you split it into 3 pieces, the fraction that is used is 1/3. Not all shapes cut middles out of things. These happen to be the 3 easiest to draw because pieces disappear. Sometimes you'll take a piece out and add something different in. That's also an iteration process. Anytime you change it, that's what you do. This represents the first iteration. Then with these, you would do the same thing, cut them into 3 equal parts and cut out the middle, so that represents the second iteration and the third iteration. So this is Cantor dust after 3 iterations. The last one we're going to look at is called the Menger sponge. To create a Menger sponge, you take a square, which is this right here, and you draw a tic-tac-toe board in it. In other words, you split it into 9 equal parts. And again, with this one, you cut out the middle. So what you're left with then is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares. So in each one of those, in the second iteration, you would draw a tic-tac-toe board on them and punch out the middle square. This represents a Menger sponge after 1 iteration, 2, 3, 4 iterations. This represents a Menger sponge after 4 iterations. As far as which fraction is used, we took the original square and split it up into 9 pieces, so the fraction that we used is 1/9. That's how you create a fractal. You can start with any shape, you design a process, an iteration process, and you repeat that iteration process over and over again. Your homework for this lesson is worksheet 11.6 and activity 22. Both are worksheets.